I want to suck your blood. I want to. I want to suck your blood. I sound more like this guy from Star Wars. I want to suck your blood. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. As I do every single weekend, we're talking the brand new show or movie that dropped on Netflix. And today's show is one I was very much looking forward to. Talked about it yesterday on my most anticipated Netflix series of the year. This is Dracula. It premiered throughout the week last week, 3 episodes on BBC. And now I guess it's throughout the rest of the world. Maybe it's just in the United States, but I need to know in the comments. I want some discussion here because this seems to be a very polarizing series once we get into the final episode. So what did you think of Dracula? Did you think it ended in the best way? And today we're going to talk non-spoilers for a quick second at the beginning, and then after I give you my score, I'm going to dive deep, or as deep as we can, into spoilers. Okay, so Dracula on Netflix. In 1897 Transylvania, the blood-drinking count draws his plans against Victorian London. So let's go into overall thoughts on this show. I started out really enjoying the style of what they were going for here. Obviously, from the guys behind Sherlock, you know it's going to be very stylistic, and the filmmaking's probably going to suffice, and it did just that, even more so, man. I thought the cinematography in parts was just really, really good. There are certain edits within there where they're flashing colors left and right. They're cutting to certain things that maybe don't make a whole lot of sense at first, but later on they make sense. At the end of the day, it did come together as a really stylistic take and a very different take on Dracula. Now, I do have a feeling that some who are obsessed and just fans of the Dracula lore are not going to love this show because it's a very different spin. Right, you have all of the elements there and what goes into making Dracula, but you're also bringing in new things and changing up the lore with certain side characters and giving us a very different introduction to Dracula than we've seen before. I also really loved the acting in this show. I think everyone fit their character very, very well, and all of the side players came together in such a... Most of the side players came together in such a way. There were a few in episode 3 that I just wasn't crazy about, but for the most part, it worked. Dolly Wells was just incredible as Sister Agatha, man. I did not expect to like her character to the degree that I liked it, but man, she almost stole the entire show. But it is Claes Bang's show, right? He is Count Dracula. He's the man that has to carry every single episode, and he's the guy that we are supposed to like and dislike simultaneously. It's always a difficult balance, especially when you're dealing with the character of Dracula, because there has to be that connection, yet a disconnection there from the audience, and I really do think his interpretation, once again, was a bit different from what we're used to, but he had every element he needed to really capture Dracula, and I thought the cast, for the most part, was really, really good. Also, John Heffernan and the impact that his character has later on in the show. Now, the 3 episodes feel similar, yet distinctly different, especially when you're comparing the first 2 to the last one, and that may not make everyone happy for different reasons. I do appreciate the fact that they were attempting to go for it, though. This show did not go in a conventional Dracula direction, I like to call it. It did attempt to spin it on its head just a little bit, and overall, I thought this show was impactful. I thought the show did what it needed to do to bring in a new audience, and it's entertaining. There's no denying the entertainment factor. Was I extremely happy where we ended up in the 3rd episode? Not necessarily. I think the ending, the final scene, was really good and what that meant for the character, but I think everything building up to that in the final episode was lackluster and just a tad bit disappointing for me. I know everyone's going to approach it from a different angle, but overall, as a whole, I found a lot of entertainment from Dracula. But I do want to go into spoilers really quick just to tell you guys what bugged me, what worked really well for me, and why I prefer, I think, the first episode over all of them. So spoiler alert, here we go. So the first episode really takes place when, and more importantly, how you expect it to go, with the twists and turns in there, of course, but it captures the feel of 1897 Transylvania, and Jonathan Harker's character traveling in, fresh blood for the Count, and the way that story progresses, and his encounter with the nuns at the end of that episode was unexpected, shocking, but it's not just his encounter with the nuns, it's the reveal of, one, Jonathan's wife being there the entire time while he's recounting this tale. I like that. I also like the fact that he was recounting this tale. The storytelling was really well done, and you can tell these guys, I mean, they've done it time in and time out, and once again, they're bringing interesting twists and turns within this first episode. But Van Helsing. I mean, we all knew as soon as she said that this was going to be an adventure, a back and forth adventure between the two characters, whether it's distinctly those two characters or what we do in the third episode, which caught a lot of people off guard. But I love their interactions. I love the face-off at the end of the episode, and I love the transition into episode 2. Now, episode 2 was distinctly different than the first, but once you get, I think it was like 35, 40 minutes in, you realize what is actually happening, and this game of chess literally being played between the two I thought was awesome. And we're playing mind games, but we're also recounting sort of a murder mystery tale while we know who the murderer is, and I thought it was really well done. Yeah, the story that he's telling about this Russian crew that is basically locked in this ship, and it's a life or death tale of figuring out who the murderer actually is, and then struggling to take down Count Dracula before they reach shore. So that was interesting. And then realizing that it is another showdown between he and Sister Agatha. I liked that. It took episode 2 a bit more to find its footing than episode 1, but once we figure out what is going on, it worked really well for me. And then the transition into episode 3, we have Dracula coming into modern day. Now, this is my episode where I wasn't all the way there on it. Some of the ideas I found a bit lackluster. Other ideas I found great. I already mentioned it, but the actual ending, what this ending represents, stripping down the tropes and the conventions at this point from the character of Dracula, using that against him and taking each other out, her dying of cancer, of course, and then he drinking the blood, knowing that it's poison. That's the way that they both go out. I loved the symbolism and the representation of that final scene. And I even thought when she stripped the curtains from the window, the light shining in, and seeing the cross on his chest, then realizing that it doesn't actually affect him, man, I thought that was so cool, so symbolic. And it is a spin that's not going to catch everyone in the right way, especially if you're a massive fan of the Dracula lore. You may feel a bit offended at what they did at the end there, but being more of a casual fan of Dracula, I'm not all the way there on all of the Dracula movies and TV shows. I was like, it's cool. That's an interesting spin. It's really everything building up to that. What he goes through with the soul of Sister Agatha and, of course, her descendant, I thought was interesting enough, for sure. And obviously, the acting's going to be good all the way through. I thought the direction in the final episode was good. It was more the writing and where the story went, focusing in on these, not kids, but these young adults going through life and certain reactions to characters that are encountering things in this show did not make a lot of sense to me. And just the subplots in this third episode, I found really unintriguing and unengaging, man. I did not like what the focus was on in this final episode. We want to see Dracula. We want to see the return of Sister Agatha, the soul within the soul, man. I thought that was so cool when they finally got to it. And the beginning was really intriguing for me of this episode. But as we progress and we focus on these other things, the Bloofer lady, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the imagery of the little girl haunting her and the idea of someone going through life knowing that they are being looked upon as something and someone, and I'll talk about the dialogue here in just a second, and then realizing that you want more, but once you get that, right, you're unhappy and you regret every ounce, every second of being with Dracula, which is what she, what her character ended up going through there at the end. I like that concept. It was more the execution and the fact that we're diving into how Lucy lives and the fact that she's so beautiful that these guys are in love with her and we follow her around the club and we showcase her taking selfies and that comes back into play at the end and it shows her text exchanges and I'm just like, why is this... Maybe everyone didn't feel this way, but why is this important? Why are we focusing on this when we are literally here for Dracula, not the girl that Dracula finds to be immaculate, right? But then what happens to her at the end, and you just feel void of all emotion because of the way that she acts, because of the way that the people around her acts. And I'll be honest, it did feel at times like it was writers writing about these younger characters, thinking about it really from an outsider's perspective, because most people don't act like this, and it's really the reactions from certain situations that I just did not buy, right? When she first encounters Count Dracula, he's like, I'm Dracula, and she's just like, cool, and I just didn't really buy those reactions. I get it. She's at this point void of all of emotion. She just wants something different in her life, but it really struck me in a weird way. And the fact that she's texting another guy when she's getting married and all of her friends are like, who you texting? Oh, you guys going to dinner tonight? And no one questions the fact that she is literally cheating on her fiance. And then when she dies, her fiance's reaction, just checking his watch, I'm just like, that is so unrealistic and unbelievable. Even if he didn't love her, she's dead. It's just things like that really bother me when she's sitting there and she's like, yeah, I'm pretty. People think I'm pretty. The writing felt so inconsistent, so different from what I was feeling from these other episodes, and really the moments that I really enjoyed in this episode. I'm not saying episode 3 is void of moments to really like and enjoy as a fan of this series, because I will say I'm a fan of this overall series. I got enjoyment out of it, but when it comes down to it, I found episode 3 to be the most disappointing aspect of Dracula, and it really stripped it away from being one of the most entertaining shows I've seen in quite a while. It still is that. I was still entertained. I really enjoy stylistic shows like this. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but Dracula did hit me in a way that was good for the most part, but it's just these things that bother me, and I know this isn't going to bother everyone, but at the end, when she's literally a dead person walking around, I know there's still a soul there, but she's dead, and she's getting into the phone and taking a selfie. I'm just like, but the touch, don't you have to be alive, like warm? Maybe she was warm to do the touch thing. The touch thing? Maybe it's not an iPhone. Maybe it's like an updated Motorola Razr with actual buttons. But if it was a touch screen, then I don't know how that would make sense. As nitpicks, I'm getting nitpicky. Overall, I found Dracula as a whole to be fun, entertaining. Not everything I wanted it to be, but I still had a good time with the show. If you guys like what we do on this channel, you enjoy these reviews, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. We will do more Netflix things every weekend of the entire year. I'm going 70% for Dracula on Netflix and the BBC. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll be back soon with possibly some Golden Globes coverage tomorrow, and then more reviews, more reactions, more lists later on this week. You guys are the best. I'll see you soon.